October 1955. 25 people abandon their ship in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. They climb into life rafts and disappear forever, and the ship keeps floating for 5 more weeks. Here's the problem: that ship was virtually unsinkable, and the people who left it knew that. This is the story of the Joyita, and how making the right decision can still end in tragedy. Welcome to Shipwreck History. This is part 3 of our Ghost Ship series. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and help support our channel. By 1955, the Joyita had lived several lives. Built in 1931, she started as a luxury yacht, served as a Navy patrol boat during World War II, and eventually landed with Captain Thomas Dusty Miller, a British sailor running trading and fishing charters in Samoa. At some point, she'd been refitted for hauling fish, with thick cork lining added to insulate refrigerated holds. That modification, meant to keep cargo cold, had an unintended side effect. It made the Joyita virtually unsinkable. Between the cork and her wooden construction, she'd stay afloat no matter how much water came aboard. At the time, Miller was struggling. Failed fishing trips had left him in debt, but he'd finally secured something that could turn things around: a government contract for regular runs to islands north of Samoa. Steady work, regular income, the kind of contract that could clear his debts if he could just make it work. On October 3, 1955, at 5 in the morning, the Joyita departed Apia Harbor in Samoa, bound for a group of islands about 300 nautical miles away. In good conditions, it's about 48 hours of sailing. The cargo was routine: medical supplies, food, timber, and empty oil drums. 25 people were aboard, including a government official, a doctor, and 2 children. But they were leaving with a problem. The day before departure, the port engine's clutch had failed. Miller made the call to go anyway, running on just the starboard engine. It would slow them down, but the voyage was short enough that it seemed manageable. At 6:45 that evening, they made a routine radio check-in from George Point. Everything was fine. Then, silence. By October 6, the Joyita was overdue for arrival. No distress signal had been received, no communication at all. The Royal New Zealand Air Force launched a massive search operation, covering 100,000 square miles of open ocean. They found nothing. For 5 weeks, search planes crisscrossed the Pacific. The Joyita had simply vanished with all 25 people aboard. Then on November 10th, a captain of a merchant ship spotted something unusual near the Fiji Islands. A vessel, severely listing, port rail underwater, covered in barnacles, drifting more than 600 miles off course. They approached cautiously and boarded. The ship was partially flooded but still afloat, exactly as her design intended. In the engine room, they discovered a corroded pipe that had been leaking, flooding the bilges and lower deck. The starboard engine was covered with mattresses. Someone had tried to make some kind of makeshift repair. The port engine was still disassembled from the original clutch problem. The flying bridge was destroyed. The canvas canopy was torn away. Windows were smashed. It looked like the ship had taken a beating from something. The radio was tuned to 2182, the international distress frequency, but when they examined it, they found the wiring was faulty. The aerial was severed, and that radio could only transmit about 2 miles, instead of the 100+ it should have managed. All the lifeboats and rafts were gone. The doctor's bag sat on deck with blood-stained bandages inside, showing someone had been injured. The clocks had stopped at 10:25 p.m. Every light switch in the ship was in the on position. Whatever happened, it happened at night. Captain Miller's logbook, sextant, and chronometer were missing, taken in the rush to abandon ship. Personal belongings remained scattered throughout the cabin, cups still sitting where they'd been set down, as if the crew had simply stepped away for a moment. Evidence suggested the crew had been trying to survive aboard after losing power, improvising solutions in a desperate attempt to keep going. Think about that scene for a moment. An empty vessel, lights still on, radio tuned to the distress frequency, drifting hundreds of miles off course, no one aboard. And the question that haunted investigators: why would anyone abandon a ship designed to stay afloat? In February 1956, a formal investigation was convened. For 5 days, they heard testimony from more than 50 witnesses. Experts examined every piece of evidence from the Joyita. The focus kept coming back to the same question: why abandon ship? The investigation commissioner's assessment was blunt: the Joyita was designed to stay afloat even when flooded. The final ruling offered no answer, unable to determine the fate of those aboard based on available evidence. The Joyita was towed to Fiji for detailed examination. Once righted, the heavy barnacle growth on her port side confirmed what investigators suspected. She'd been listing at this angle for weeks. The fuel remaining in her tanks told another story. She'd traveled roughly 243 miles before her systems failed, meaning she was abandoned only about 50 miles short of her destination. Harbor masters who examined her were baffled that anyone would leave a vessel in this condition, especially one designed to be virtually unsinkable. But when all the pieces of this mystery are laid out, a picture starts to form. Not a complete one, but enough to see the shape of what likely happened. The corroded pipe in the engine room had probably been leaking for some time before anyone noticed. Ships often take on water slowly at first. By the time someone discovered the flooding, it had become serious, and it was discovered around 10:25 at night, in darkness with the ship already listing badly. The leak likely started sometime after 9 p.m. on their second night at sea, with 9 hours of darkness still ahead. As water flooded in, the single working engine would have struggled to maintain steering. The ship started tilting sideways against the waves, taking on that severe list. Something that might have been manageable in daylight became a nightmare scenario in pitch darkness. With water rising, the ship tilting dangerously, and no way to know how bad things really were. Every minute would have felt like the ship was about to go under. Someone went to send a distress signal by tuning the radio to the emergency frequency. The equipment appeared to work. Lights came on, dials responded. They believed they transmitted an SOS. They had no way of knowing a broken cable connected to the antenna meant their call for help traveled maybe 2 miles before dying in the static. They thought help was coming. The evidence suggests they'd hit something earlier: the destroyed flying bridge, the torn canopy. These point to a collision with debris or a submerged object that started the flooding. Someone had been injured badly enough to need medical attention, leaving those blood-stained bandages behind. Miller faced an impossible decision with incomplete information. His ship was taking on water. His navigation equipment was compromised, and as far as he knew, rescue was on the way. The Joyita was only about 50 miles from her destination, but it might as well have been 500. Miller gave the order: everyone into the life rafts. It was the logical, reasonable decision. The decision that seemed like the only option at the time. It was also the decision that killed them, because the ship they abandoned kept floating for 5 more weeks, and the help they were waiting for never received their call. Once those life rafts separated in the darkness and strong Pacific currents, the chances of survival dropped to nearly zero. The search area became impossibly large, even with provisions for several days. 25 people scattered across the open ocean and small rafts faced overwhelming odds. The search for survivors turned up nothing. No bodies were ever recovered. No life rafts were ever found. Ocean currents in that region could have carried them in any direction. Some have speculated they may have reached a remote island and died there. Their remains never discovered. As of today, all 25 people are officially listed as missing. The investigation considered everything from piracy to Cold War conspiracies. But none of it fit the evidence. The simplest explanation, the one that fits what was found, is also the cruelest. A series of reasonable decisions led to catastrophe. The Joyita represents one of those rare maritime tragedies, where the ship survived and the people didn't. She was engineered specifically to stay afloat no matter what, and she did exactly what she was built to do. But naval architecture can't account for human psychology under pressure. The line between survival and disappearance came down to minutes and assumptions. Sometimes the safest place is the one that looks the most dangerous, and sometimes doing everything that seems right leads to the worst possible outcome. The Pacific Ocean kept its secret. 25 people vanished without a trace, leaving behind an empty ship that refused to sink. What do you think you would have done in this situation? Stayed aboard, or taken the rafts? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share, and let us know in the comments what shipwrecks you want us to cover next. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. And until next time, keep exploring.